try to interact with the people. So you can actually give the response in the chat window. Okay. Uh, Now, when you say innovation, right? So engineering and innovation, they are inseparable concepts because the relationship is there in engineering workplaces, engineering research, development process, and so on, and also in engineer education methods, lot of innovations. So innovating in the teaching methods is a mandatory activity, right? Now, innovation skills should be present, especially in engineering, okay? Because you know that the structures and practices, methodologies of the current educational system not suitable enough to support learning needs. I'll actually touch upon this later. Okay, so the students as well the faculty need to engage in wicked problem solving. What do you mean by wicked problem? Wicked problem means a complex engineering problem or ill-structured problem because the students and as well as the faculty they are used to well-structured problem because when you say wicked problem different domains like highly complex, it may be uncertain, value laden, spanning multiple domains from engineering perspective. So this is where the students are lacking, and this is pointed out by the industry people also. Okay, and future engineers should lead and head companies in their careers. Nowadays, right, the time has come. Some of you might have noticed Suresh Gopinath, I remember, in India, he has become CEO at the age of 17 to a multinational company. And you might have heard about Francisco Dios, that is uh, CEO of Cognizant. So, early age, in future, our engineers should lead a head company. So they should have developed creative problem solving, right? Because the students continuously learn from formal, informal, uh, just state, formal, non-formal, and informal sources. Formal means the knowledge you get from institute, non-formal from community organization, and informal from your friends and relatives. So the three most important elements regarding innovation is creation of something new. Innovation is a process, and it should provide some kind of quantitative and qualitative improvement in the outcomes, right? So that is very important. Okay. Um, so we have participants from our institution and the institutions outside, and all of them are familiar about the NBA process. So if you look at the SAR uh, uh, given by NBA, they insist on innovation for the faculty in teaching and learning. They insist. Okay. So they say that the use of ICT is a must. Okay. Now everybody started using it. And the innovation should be there in instruction delivery, instruction methods, assessment, evaluation, and so on. And finally, they are very particular about one thing because even though there are a number of innovative practices, NBA, they have specifically mentioned, that is why I have actually shown here also, inclusive classroom. So this requires a very big discussion, but there are a lot of models available. One such model is co-teacher model because to a classroom, two teachers go. Say one teacher actually lecturing, another teacher goes around and helping the students. This is actually called the co-teacher model. Okay, this is not a tutorial class. So inside actual class delivery, another teacher will be present, and that another teacher should also have the expertise on the subject which is being taught. So this NBA insists inclusive classroom. Okay. So, uh, No choice, right? We don't have a choice whether we do use ICT. The question is how well we do it, because everybody is using ICT, right? But the point is how well we do it, right? There are a lot of features are available. You have to explore. That's why I put this slide here. Okay, so all the faculties you have gathered here, there should be some change, right? Innovation is an integral part of good teaching, okay, but it's difficult. You can say it easily, but it's very difficult. Okay, so all of us talking about active learning, how to engage the students, right? Because whatever the content you give it in the class, right, you should make the students to talk, write, reflect, and express their thinking. Because it is not a traditional classroom where there will be one-way communication, right? So the students should be involved. That's why we call the student-centric education, where students should be engaged, right? So then and there, you should make them to talk, make them to write, make them to reflect and express their thinking. Okay. But most of you are gathered here. You may tell me, sir, my lectures are plenty interactive. So I often pass to ask questions if they understood the material. Right? You do that, right? And the students can interrupt with doubts. I allow them. But whether the students are asking, right, that is different. I never hesitate to answer their questions. I show them the demos and videos and so on. So these are the things you may actually tell me. But aren't these enough, right? They have done some experiment. You see here. Right. So the lecture quality does not seem to matter because you have got so many resources, MOOC videos, so lectures from NPTEL, right? The professors from IITs and so on, right? And their lectures are supposed to be very, very good, right? But they say that the lecture quality doesn't seem to matter because they have done an experiment. You see here, experiment, two videos of the same instructor, right? This is an experiment. And one video to group one, it's a fluent video where the instructor speaks fluently, no notes, upright, maintenance, eye contact, and so on, right? And for group two, this fluent video speaks haltingly, often sees the nose, slouches, poor body language, and so on, right? At the end of this, they did some measurement by means of conducting a performance test. There is a post test. What is the result? Surprising, right? For the group one, the perceived learning greater than the actual learning. Okay. And perceived is equal to our actual learning. In both the cases, right, there is no improvement at all. Right? So the same actual learning for both the groups, right? So what is actually the inference, right? So it is not the quality of lectures. What does lead to better learning? So this is a very, very important question because you have so many lecture videos in NPTEL, right? MOOC and so on, right? Delivered by quality teachers, right? And even your teacher give a quality lecture. But the point here is the students' attention and practice, right? Suppose I ask you, right? Suppose you tell me that I am very good in the subject. It will not happen in one day, right? Or 1 week or 10 days, right? You can just read a book and say that, sir, I am very expert in it. It's not like that. It actually comes out of the practice and experience. After some years of teaching and some years of reading the subject, you say that you have developed some expertise. The same thing happened, right? For the student should practice. Whatever may be the lecture, right? So it's only a perception. So you have to make the students to practice, or some kind of engagement should be there in the classroom. Some activity. Okay, it's not that you go and lecture for 1 hour, write something on the board and go. It won't happen. Even though it is very good, it won't go to the student. So that is the idea, right? So important thing is encouraging the engagement. That is very important. Okay. Um, so The student engagement that reflects the degree of attention, curiosity, interest, optimism, passion. All things should be developed. At the same time, it will create some kind of motivation if all these things are achieved. So for this, right, what I am going to show now is a very simple methods. It's not innovative practice, right? You have to make the students to be engaged in the classroom. So always I tell my faculty members, you give some kind of short writing task. Okay, right, halfway through the class, give the students 10 minutes to write a postcard length explanation what the class is about. So you give them 10 minutes and what is the advantage? You get the instant feedback. You collect everything and go to your room and go through that, right? If 60% of the students have written something, what you are taught in the class, then you can feel happy because you have engaged them. Okay, so this is actually a technique to get the instant feedback, right? And a big question. So then and there, you have to actually, because I always tell that yeah, any teaching or delivery, that should be mixed with the real life examples, right? So a big question means, then and there you ask, take an important principle in your topic, a discipline, ask something like, what would society look like if everyone crafts this really well? So this is a very, very general question. Okay. Now, I can actually ask a big question. How will we communicate across the world in future? So you are making the students to think, right? Then and there you have to do this, right? So they can recollect what they have actually got some information through some journals or technical magazines. So some people, some students may come forward and discuss, right? So now suppose you discuss this here, the communication change in the future is through augmented reality. So this is a very hot topic, augmented reality and virtual reality. Okay. So what is augmented reality? So you take some time to explain this to the students, create some interest. Okay. What is augmented reality? In augmented reality system, you view the world through technological overlay. Suppose there are some, and so you can use even your smartphone through camera. You can see, or you can have what is known as augmented reality glasses you can wear and see, right? In both the cases, what is really happening here, right? In the real picture, you see some technological overlay, some digital information is added along with that. So that actually produces augmented reality. You may ask me, right? Real-time digital information is added with the, so you can ask me, say, what is the use of this, right? Suppose, very good example is restaurant review. Suppose you go to a new place, you stand outside a restaurant, either you can use your smartphone, suppose it has got that facility, or you can wear the augmented reality glasses, just look at the restaurant. Then immediately you see, you can read the customer reviews of that restaurant and what is the daily special there at that time, okay, without ever walking inside, right? So this is a future communication, right? So now you see here, imagine looking at a stranger using this system, right? So through augmented reality system, if you look at a person, immediately there is a display of the name of the person and his or her Facebook profile, Twitter handle, and other information. Everything will be displayed. You see the future. So already these things are tested, right? So language barriers are disappearing, right? Because 10 to 15 years back, it was a dream only. Devices that can translate language in the real time. You must understand real time. That's why I actually shown as a bold letters. So now it has come to reality, allowing people from different countries and cultures communicate without a need for an interpreter. Okay, so now Google has actually done a lot of research on this, right? 10 to 15 years they have spent. They have come out with what is known as Google Translate. Okay, now I just want to ask, I don't know how many of you are gathered here. Could you please tell me, use your chat window, right? If you are used to just Google Translate all the features, you type Y, or otherwise you type N. No, right? Just please use your chat window. Yes or no? Y or N? Okay, Y or N? I can see only one. Mr. Magendra Kumar typed it no. What about others? Please interact. Right? So this thing should happen with the students, right? You have to make them know quick. Sendil Kumar. Nisha, how many participants are there from outside colleges? I don't see
Sir, 39, sir.
39 from other colleges.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So I need not wait. I've seen so many N's here, right? So that it's my responsibility to discuss about it. Okay. Right. Right. Google Translate, actually, it's a wonder. Okay. I am effectively making use of this. I've got the privilege to introduce to you, and you must actually use it. You must actually appreciate the effort put by Google and our man Google Picture, right? So, what is Google Translate? It's a free multilingual neural machine translation to translate text and websites. They actually use neural
Hello, sir. Sir.
that is artificial neural. Here is hello.
Yes, sir. Now it's audible, sir.
I think my internet connection is not stable. It is coming. So let me actually switch over to some other. Please give me a few seconds.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It is not stable. I'll change my net. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now it will be stable. I have connected to BSNL. Now you can see here. This is actually Google Translation. It actually converts the text. So I just focus my camera, right? So it is given in Spanish. So it converts in English. Turn off telephone mobile, right? I just actually focus it on the text in an image. It converts. Okay. I will actually give more details later. I'll quickly go through. So, in the distant future, they predict that they may be able to communicate by sending our thoughts to the network, someone else's brain, right? So, it is called the brain-computer interface. A lot of work is going on in the US. A lot of funds they've allotted for brain-computer interface. So two great people are working on it. You know that Elon Musk, right? He's the manufacturer of Tesla cars. He has actually allotted so much money on neural link, that is having a brain implants in order to have human to human communication. It makes several years, but they were attempting it, right? So, whereas in 50 years, maybe we'll be there to see that, an electronic version of telepathy, because 2 years back they are talking about downloading the consciousness into a machine, right, to a computer, because you know what is a consciousness. After the person's death, the consciousness will be stored in a computer, and after some time also Amazon will sell that also, right? So if it is actually useful, okay. Uh, Nisha, if there is any problem in the sound, please tell me. Okay.
Okay, sir. Now it's clear only, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, if we talk about innovation, we cannot forget this man, brilliant man, right? Nikola Tesla. Okay, I always admire this man. He's actually got more than 100 patents and 700 inventions. Okay, so I was actually surprised to see his predictions, because when we predict a brain-computer interface, this man in the who lived in 1900, he actually predicted a lot of things. Okay, now you see here, he predicted smartphone. Tesla envisioned wireless device that would incorporate video and telephone technology and work over network very much like internet. Because Tesla, you know that he is the person who invented alternate current electric motors, and he got patent also. You know that the rest of the story, right? It has revolutionized. So everywhere they are using AC motors, right? So I will actually give the same words he has spoken. Okay. So what I'm going to show, doesn't this description below by Tesla from 1926 sound like a smartphone to you? You see here, I just read it out for when wireless is perfectly applied, the whole earth will be converted into a huge brain, which in fact it is all the things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole. We shall be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of distance. Not only this, but through television and telephony, we shall see and hear one another as perfectly as though we were face to face, despite the intervening distance of thousands of miles. And the instrument through which we shall be able to do this will be amazingly simple compared to our present telephone. And the last thing is, a man will be able to carry one in his vest pocket. The same words given by, so this is a beautiful prediction by Tesla in 1926 is predicted this. Okay. And what about other predictions of Tesla? Some of them materialized, some the work is going on. He predicted Wi-Fi. He predicted autopilot, self-driving cars. He predicted wireless transmission of energy. Planes that don't need fuel, the death ray, thought camera. Now we are using MRI, right? Flying cars, remote control, drone technology. All these things were predicted by the great man Tesla. Okay. Now I'm going to show another prediction, right? So you may wondering why I'm saying all these things, because these things, in order to engage the students, because the present generation, they love the present technology and the future technology. Okay, so in that way you can attract the students. So this man I am showing is called Nicholas Negroponte. Okay, he's formerly professor of MIT, and then he's a founder of MIT Media Lab. In this particular lab only, they have done a lot of things. Okay, but he made some prediction, beautiful prediction. You see here, in 1984, the technology leader Nicholas Negroponte was able to predict with surprising accuracy e-readers. Now you talk about Kindle, right? E-readers and face-to-face teleconferencing. What we are doing now, he predicted it, and more importantly, the touchscreen interface of the iPhone. Okay, so touchscreen interface. So he predicted that you can have a touchscreen using a finger. You can actually operate the phone. At that time, all these researchers and the people, right, marked that shift. and even somebody called him as an idiot, right? So at that time, the cell phone was like this, okay, like this. Okay, now please uh, hear him what he says in 1994. He gave a talk in TED. Okay, you know that what is TED? Technology Education. Okay, design. So Nicholas Nickerbonder prediction on touchscreen display smartphone in
Input
1981.
information, and my favorite example is always fingers. I'm very interested in touch-sensitive displays, high-tech, high-touch. Isn't that what somebody said? I say, well, of course, whatever. It's certainly a very important medium for input, and a lot of people think that fingers are very low-resolution sort of stylus for inputting to a display. In fact, they're not. It's really a very, very high resolution input medium. You have to just do it twice. You have to sort of touch the screen and then rotate your finger slightly. And you can move a cursor with great accuracy. And so when you see on the market these systems that have just a few light emitting diodes on the side and are very low resolution, it's nice that they exist because it still is better than nothing, but it in some sense misses the point, namely that fingers are very, very high resolution input medium. Now, what are some of the other advantages? Well, one advantage is that you don't have to pick them up, and people don't realize how important that is, not having to pick up your fingers to use them. When you think for a second of the mouse on Macintosh, and I will not criticize the mouse too much, when you're typing, what you have to, and you want to now put something, first of all, you got to find the mouse. You have to probably stop, maybe not come to a grinding halt, but you've got to sort of find that mouse. Then you find the mouse, and you're going to have to wiggle it a little bit to see where the cursor is on the screen. And then when you finally see where it is, then you've got to move it to get the cursor over there, and then bang, you've got to hit a button or do whatever. That's 4 separate steps versus typing and touching and typing and sort of just doing it all in one motion, or 1.5, depending on how you want to count. Again, what I'm trying to do is just illustrate the kinds of problems that I think face the designers of new computer systems and entertainment systems and educational systems from the perspective of the quality of that interface. And another advantage, of course, of using fingers is you have 10 of them. And we have never known how to do this technically. So this slide is a fake slide. We never succeeded in using 10 fingers. But there are certain things you can do, obviously, with more than one finger input, which is rather fascinating. What we did stumble across was something
நாங்க ஏதோ அட்ஜஸ்ட் பண்ணிட்டோம். நாங்க
Sir?
மறுபடியும் உங்களுக்கு செஷன் எப்படிங்கன்னு மாத்திட்டோம்.
Peter sir? Peter sir?
நாங்க உங்களுக்கு எழுங்க பார்த்துட்டோம். நாளைக்கு செஷன் மாத்த, நாளைக்கு உங்களுக்கு செகண்ட் செஷன் தான் இருக்கு.
Hello?
நாளைக்கு 2வது செஷன் தானே. மத்தியானம் சரிங்க.
Sir? Peter, sir?
சரிங்க.
Hello? Sir? Sir, am I audible, sir?
You are audible. I'm very sorry. There's an interruption in my
Okay,
internet
okay, no
connection.
problem. Okay, sir, no problem.
I'll proceed.
It was a feature in the sense you could build a pressure sensitive display. And when you touch it with your finger, you can actually then introduce all the forces in the face of that screen.
Excuse me, sir. Video is
Yes.
not visible, sir.
இருங்க பார்க்குறேன். திருப்பி ஷேர் பண்ணணுமா?
Yes, sir. திரும்ப ஷேர் பண்ணிடுங்க, sir.
Wait. Do you see?
Yes, sir. PPT alone, sir.
இருங்க வந்துடுச்சா? Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm sorry for the interruption.
Sorry, it will
Internet
happen,
problem.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now I was actually showing the prediction of Nicholas Negroponte in 1984. He predicted touchscreen, and at that time the people laughed at him. So after 30 years, really what happened? You see, everybody using a smartphone, touchscreens, and so on. Okay. And along with that, he actually made a lot of predictions like e-reader and this conferencing and so on, right? So 2014, exactly 30 years after, he was invited once again to TED Talk. Okay. So at that time, he was actually telling about all these predictions he made about 30 years back. At the end of his talk, a person asked him, so you predicted correctly everything about 30 years back. Now you have come 2014. Can you make predictions? What will happen after 30 years from now? Right? Maybe 2014 means 2044. Right? Now you watch this video.
All right.
You're going to give me extra time?
No, well, that was wickedly clever, wickedly clever. You gained it beautifully. Nicholas, what is your prediction?
Thank you. For
In a
asking.
sense,
I'll tell you what my prediction is. And my prediction, and this is a prediction, so it'll be 30 years, I won't be here. But one of the things about learning how to read, we have been doing a lot of consuming of information like through our eyes, and so it may be a very inefficient channel. So my prediction is that we are going to ingest information. You're going to swallow a pill and know English. You're going to swallow a pill and know Shakespeare. And the way to do it is through the bloodstream. So once it's in your bloodstream, it basically goes through it and gets into the brain. And when it knows that it's in the brain and the different pieces, it deposits it in the right places. So it's ingesting.
Have you been hanging out with Ray Kurzweil by any chance?
No, but I've been hanging around with Ed Boyden and hanging around with one of the speakers who's here, Hugh Herr, and there are a number of people. This isn't quite as far-fetched. So 30 years from now,
We will check it out.
It can
We're going to
be.
be back, and we're going to play this clip 30 years from now, and then all eat the red pill. Well, thank you for that.
Okay. We might have
Peter, sir. Sir.
Okay.
Visible.
So once again, I'm sorry. Now, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. See, some problem with the BSNL, I don't know, particularly this happening today. Okay, so this is very interesting. So these kind of predictions, right, these people make, and if you actually share this to the students, they'll be very much interested. This is the way you have to make the class interesting. So they must actually come with some hope, right? So I can go to his class. This guy will tell something about future, something like that, right? You could then and there you can mix it up and to make your class very much interesting. Okay. So there are a number of techniques like this. Okay. So this, like I always say that ask one exam question. This is very simple, but only thing is after actually taking class for 10 to 15 minutes, you can ask one of the students to come to the stage and ask him actually to think about the possible question that may be asked in the university examination from the topic that have been discussed. Okay, so he may actually come out with the exam question and you put forward to his classmates and then some kind of discussion and questions they can ask, right? And you can make the students refer some article and come prepared about the thing that you have discussed. So that next class you can have some kind of very short seminars and engage the students. The change of tactics is very important. Normally, this should happen because you must not go to the class with a fixed state of mind, right? So, depending upon the mood of the student, you must actually change the tactics. And the stop and ask, you should understand correctly this. You have to stop the lecture after 10 to 15 minutes. Same thing, you ask one of the students to come and ask him to explain what has been discussed so far, and then and even ask him to ask some question to his classmates. So this list is long. I have explained only few, right? Now, in the morning, Dr. Vanity was actually listing some innovative practices. I'll be discussing only few, like the Z2A method, peer instruction, flipped class Siemens, and think and pair share, team pair solo, and many others. Many others he has highlighted like project-based learning, cooperative learning, problem-based learning, design thinking, thinking-based learning, contemporary-based learning technique, teaching through virtual reality, and technology through cloud computing. All these things she highlighted. So I will actually discuss only 1, 2, 3, 4 only, and the peer instruction is my favorite. Always I like this technique, right? And this is very, very useful, very powerful, and almost all the institutions abroad and even here in India, they are trying this. Even if it was tried at VCT also, right? And some of the things that I've listed, like ZPA method, peer instruction, flip class, and so on. So I will quickly go through, right? So ZPA approach, explain the application of a particular concept first and explain the effects of such applications. Like instead of straight away going through the concept and discuss about the theoretical aspects, first you discuss about such application. What are the advantages that makes a particular concept clear? Student develop interest and creates long-lasting memory. You definitely remember if you actually try to compare this. Right? Suppose this is a very famous experiment. I have actually shown this slide to the faculty members here at the VCD. Galileo's experiment of different objects falling at the same rate, right? Different objects with the different weights, right? This is actually the concept that was proved by Galileo. So here, when you maybe this is taught in the lower classes. When you start discussing this, don't immediately start discussing like this. The law of conservation of energy, freely falling body, and all these equations and so on, the students will be lost. Instead of that, you tell him about an experiment that was conducted on a leaning tower, Pisa tower, right, where they dropped two objects of different weights. Even this experiment I have seen in few lectures. Um, uh, I have seen faculty members dropping a duster and a chalk piece and showing them this falling at the same time, right? So you actually explain this, or even some interesting videos are there. I will show you that. Okay, so here.
Okay, today to test out my new slow motion camera I got, I'm going to be dropping a feather and a chunk of metal and see if they hit the ground at the same time under a vacuum. So the key to this experiment is dropping them at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the feather to the top of the vacuum chamber with a magnet. So this experiment proves that gravity pulls on everything with the same acceleration. And the reason is because the force that gravity pulls down on you is proportional to the amount of mass in the object. So the more mass an object has, the harder gravity pulls on it. But the more mass it has, the harder it is to move. So what that amounts to is everything is pulled down at the same acceleration due to gravity. But what makes it a little bit messy is that in air, there's also air resistance when things fall. And so you can't really see how everything falls at the same rate. But if you remove that air, then you should be able to see that effect. Okay, first we'll do in-air test. So this is dropping a feather in air. Okay, we're under full vacuum now, so let's do our test under vacuum and see if it looks any different. Okay, I want to do it in normal speed so you can appreciate how fast the feather actually falls. So here's feather in a vacuum, normal speed. 3, 2, 1. It looks like it almost gets pushed down. It's weird to see it fall like that.
So this video demonstrated, right? So the students will be interested in some kind of curiosity, right? Then after that, you can solve all those equations and so on, right? So the experiment proves the experimental hypothesis correct, right? This is because the rate of acceleration of the object in a field of force of gravity is independent of the object. If you ignore the wind resistance, that is why he has shown dropping it in a vacuum without a wind, right? So this is actually now this is my favorite technique, right? Peer instruction. This was developed by Eric Mazur, a physicist and educator at Harvard University. And he is an entrepreneur in technology startups for education and military market. He teaches physics in the Harvard University, first year students, right? So before developing this method, right? At one day he was very much disappointed because his students are very good in theory, solving any type of problems. But when he posted a concept question, all the students miserably failed. He was totally upset. So he was thinking about it, say how to actually get a concept to the students, right? So they are very strong in theory. So this was introduced to me by my student, right? He is Manohar Swaminathan. He is now principal researcher in Microsoft Corporation. His research interests technologies augmented reality, virtual reality, graphics, and engineering education. Okay, so he is actually interested in doing augmented reality applications for visually impaired people. So he only introduced this. He sent a lot of materials, PDF documents, and links and so on. He made me in the mailing list of Eric Masur. Whenever Eric Masur comes out with some new paper, it will be sent to me to my mail. Okay. So he created some interest in me. So I actually gone through all the details and tried here at VCET. In some classes, some faculty member tried it also. So you see down two images where a lot of activity you see inside the classroom. Normally, you don't see this kind of activity. Now you see here, so what is exactly peer and why this is very popular? Why this is different from other types of questioning? Okay, and then the peer instruction, nowadays they use a technology, which they call it as a clicker. I will show you later, right? So now I pose a question. Now let us assume that this question is posed to the student. You toss one old 1 rupee coin and new 1 rupee coin, which is most likely outcome, right? Probably two heads or two tails or one head, one tail, or each of 1, 2, 3 above is equally likely. This is the question posed to the student. The students individually think and answer. Here answer means vote, right? He tells which is a correct answer, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, something like that. Then you make the student to discuss who is neighbor and vote again. Okay, so you give him 2 to 3 minutes. Then you just see how many of them change their answer. So if they change the answer and almost most of the students arrived at the correct answer, then what is really happening? You make the students to talk, argue, listen, right? So reason and draw. So they are actively engaged. Okay, you make the students actively engaged, learn from each other, teach each other. Those who do not know, willing to think, reason and answer, they are also form part of the discussion. Those who do not know also participate. Pre-existing thinking that the misconceptions are removed, right? And what is the advantage for the instruction? Immediate feedback to the instructor. Students realize that even others are struggling. Okay, even others are struggling, right? So you might have thought that that particular student is very intelligent, but he is also struggling. So he is very happy. Okay, so builds a friendly yet scientific atmosphere, improve communication, right? So this technology, right, got lot of I will tell you later, right? So this is the anatomy of peer instruction. So you start from here, lecture, okay, you ask the question, right? May vote individually, right? And then followed by peer discussion, that is a discussion among the students, and try to convince, right? My answer is correct, your answer is wrong, or your answer is something like that. Then once again vote. So they change their opinion and vote, right? Then the class discussion. So this is the anatomy of a peer instruction method, right? Okay. So this is the technology used. Okay, it is like a remote, right? It's called a clicker. It's got 5 buttons here because each button actually corresponds to the option A, B, C, D, E, something like that. It is actually available in different forms. What happens? This is actually picked some USB interface which is attached to the computer. That is a program which collects all the responses and draw the histogram. So the histogram tells you how many people answered for A, B, C, and D, and so on, right? So this is the way it is happening. Okay, so he actually does it for 2 times. So this is the, see, you see, but the clicker are not peer instruction. Clicker is only a technology. So you see, this is an MIT classroom. So you see the amount of discussion watched by the teacher. Okay, the discussion that is going on, right? Here, they are in pair and discussing, right? And always the clicker, not necessary. You can take a A4 sheet of paper, fold it into 4, right? and mark A, B, C, D and give it to the students. They can just raise if the answer is A, C, B, something like that. So this is without using the gadget, right? Or you can make them to raise their finger, right? 1, 2, 3 and something like that. Okay. So the peer instruction, I given the flow chart, brief lecture, concept test. Student answer individually, right? So when you say concept test, it is not a MCQ test, right? It's a concept. Okay, I'll come to that later. What is the concept? And then the student will immediately see the histogram, but the answer is not displayed. Only how many people answered for A, B, C, something like that. Then the next block, they made to discuss, peer discussion, 2 to 3 minutes. Student try to convince each another. Okay, so if he is very strong in a particular answer, he may convince his friend, or he may take the answer from other student. It goes on like that, right? Okay. And then once again, the student answer again individually. This time the histogram, right? The answer will be displayed, which is the correct answer. Okay. So this is the way the peer instruction works, right? So this is the flow chart, when to use and when to actually stop, right? You give the brief lecture, concept test. If the correct answer is less than 30%, then the concept is not gone to the student, right? There is no question of conducting further. Once again, go back and discuss the concept and come back, right? If the correct answer is between 30 to 70, then you go for peer instruction, right? And student revote. If the answer is greater than 70%, then you are satisfied. No need to conduct peer instruction. You just explain, go to the next topic, right? This is the way it is done. Actually, it is practiced like this only in most of the classes abroad, and even India, most of the universities and colleges they do, right? Okay. So the lot of research, I told you that there's a very important lot of research. Okay. 300 plus research articles have come in physics, biology, chemistry, even now computer science, engineering, psychology, and so on. Okay. And courses using peer instruction outperform the traditional lecture courses. You have to try it and see. Okay. Students can better answer a question on their own, right? So research on student perception says, right? They have done some research on that. If you employ the clickers, right? The students are very interested to come to the class because this is a kind of gamification, right? Gamification of your delivery, class delivery. Feel part of the class community, make the voice heard and hold them accountable, right? So writing effective peer instruction, see the instruction should be conceptual, avoid analytic computation. The student should not make use of the calculator, right? And elicits a prerequisite thinking. Okay, prerequisite thinking, I mean misconceptions. All these things are removed, right? And what are the questions you can ask the student to predict the result of an experiment or algorithm? Makes the students apply ideas in new concept. Okay, relates different representation as believable distractor, because he has to. There should be some distractor. Okay, you cannot immediately pick the answer. Okay, but the question should be ambiguous. It's not ambiguous, not leading, not trivial. It should not lead to the answer. Then the concept fails. Okay. So types of peer instruction, I will quickly go through. Okay. These are the types, right? I will show one example each. Okay. Conceptual reasoning. A parallel plate capacitor charged to a total charge Q and the battery is removed. A dielectric slab is inserted between the plates. What happens to the energy stored in the capacitor? Because you actually teach them about the parallel plate capacitor, the charge, derive a lot of equations. But this is a concept question. Unless otherwise he knows the concept, he cannot answer. The three answers are given: increases, decreases, stays the same. Okay. Well, I can explain, but if there is a time limit, I'll quickly go through. So this is a very famous question. The faculty members of VCT will be familiar with this. This is once again a concept reasoning of the topic they have studied in the earlier semesters. A small car collides head-on with a massive truck. Which vehicle experiences the greater magnitude force during the collision? So this doesn't require any calculation or problem solving. The answers are the car, the truck. The answer depends upon the speeds of the vehicles were moving. Both experience the same force during the collision. But Nisha told me that around 35 participants from colleges outside. Is it okay? Is it correct? Nisha, is she there? Or Mahendra? How many participants are there from other colleges?
Sir, actually 39, sir.
39. So I'm putting this, posting this question to those faculty members. So don't hesitate. You actually use your chat box and tell me the answer. Because I know most of the faculty members at VCT, they know the answer. So other faculty members from other colleges, you just use your chat box and just mark either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. I'll tell you because I'm not checking your the knowledge on this particular thing. I'll tell you later why I'm asking this. Okay. Anybody in the chat box? Nisha, are they answering?
No, sir.
No. Okay. So let me quickly go through this. Because what I am trying to say this, after actually taking the class, you must always try to check whether they understood the concept. Because this particular question doesn't require any calculation, right? Use of any equations, nothing. Okay, I will go to the next question, right? This is actually the predict result of an experiment, right? So light bulb lights up when it is connected to a power source through a weak acid. What will happen if you use 100% acid solution? Brighter, dimmer, or same brightness. So here you should know about the difference between weak acid and the strong acid and the content of ion and all those things, right? So the students should know that, right? And this also a very famous question, checking the concept of short circuit, predict the results of an experiment. A switch S is here. If it is closed, what is the resistance? There are 4 answers given, 50, 10, 8, 0. Okay. So this actually checks whether the student has a conceptual knowledge on short circuit theory in electric circuits. Okay. So here we are not asking him to calculate any resistance or use Thevenin's theorem or Kirchhoff's laws. Just looking into the circuit, you must be able to give the answer. Okay. So this is the predict results of an experiment. What I have shown here in the left-hand side is a common emitter amplifier. And everybody is familiar about the bypass capacitor. So the question is, if the bypass capacitor is removed, what will happen to the gain of the amplifier? Increases, decreases, remains the same. Because the students, when you teach about common emitter amplifier, and if you ask the question, draw the common emitter amplifier and explain the operation, everybody will write. So this particular question, right, it requires some conceptual knowledge. If the capacitor is removed, what happens? Okay. Unless otherwise he knows the concept, he cannot answer. Okay. Right? This is the predictor. And this is actually the reasoning with the representation. You give an output, input-output relationship, you give 4 diagrams. And you have to find out which diagram or which circuit produces this output. Okay. So this also, he has to actually think about what he has studied and apply the knowledge. Right? And this is actually a stepping stone to problem solving, because always the people, because you know that the students, and normally they don't like Maxwell's equation or other equation related to electric flux density and electric energy. So these things gives a relation between the polarization and the charge and so on, right? So they have to think, right? So there is a parallel plate capacitor, you insert a dielectric slot. Which equation is supposed? This is actually the what is known as the starting point, right? Uh, if we understand the concept and pick the correct answer, then you can go ahead and do a lot of derivations and other mathematics, right? This is a general collecting a general opinion, right? So when to use peer instruction questions, right? Uh, so questions within the learning cycle, you can do it before the class. Check the pre-request language because every subject course requires a pre-request knowledge, right? You can check it using peer instruction. Or in the middle, right? Questions to check the knowledge, application, analysis. And then assessing the end of the model, you can actually do some polling, right? Review, something like that. So 3 different stages you can do it, right? So there are a lot of research, and Eric Masur, who is actually responsible for this, he has written a very beautiful book, Peer Instruction Users Manual. This is available as an e-book. I think I have downloaded it. And now for CS courses, this website is very popular. Peer Instruction for CS.org. Okay. Challenges and best practices. If you try this for the first time inside the class, right? First time if we give the class is very quiet because normally it happens. The students won't come forward. So they will be sitting just like that. So you have to be patient. So 3 to 4 iterations, then they will come to your group, right? The class is too noisy. This is okay. This is the good noise because this is the only time where you make the students to talk from the first bench to the last bench. A lot of discussion, right? It will be noisy. Even the adjacent class will be disturbed. But you should feel happy about it, right? Some engagement, some learning is happening within the peers, right? Some students may not participate, right? You have to explain that, right? Students may not know how to reason. So this will not happen if you choose the question properly. So it will happen, right? And sometimes the class is not controllable. So you must have a means to control them, right? So what are the best practices? Recommended questions requiring conceptual reasoning, right? Verbal, logical, diagrammatic, and so on. No analytical, no solving, right? Avoid questions involving number crunching. It's not necessary, right? So this is to check only the concepts. Avoid questions that can be answered by memorization. So this is not the place where you have to ask questions like that. Okay. Now, the best practices continue, right? Don't skip the peer discussion because the main concept here is only peer discussion. You should not skip, right? So focus on reasoning, not right answer. Right? If they come with the right answer, okay, right answer, I'm happy, something like that, right? So you have to actually ask the student to reason it out. Then only you can understand whether the concept has gone to you. Okay. So you can have 2 to 4 and some instruct in Eric Mazur, right? He used entirely peer instruction, no lectures, right? So it is very surprising. I don't know how he is doing it because I have to see if any video is available. We have to find it out how he is doing all the classes, right? Because normally we recommend the faculty members to do it at least 2 or 3 times in the semester, where they feel that they want to know whether the concept has gone to the student. Okay. Now, it is already 12:30. Okay. Nisha, there are something, shall I actually skip it? Huh?
Only our faculty members are in the group, sir.
எல்லாமே போயிட்டாங்களா?
So only one.
Lunch time போயிட்டாங்க போல இருக்கு.
Yes.
Okay, so I will, because these things are very familiar to our faculty members. So let me not actually discuss this further. I will quickly go through. And I am interested to show something, some videos, maybe 10 to 15 minutes about the Google Translate, right? Okay, I will skip all these things, right? But there are some interesting slides, okay, anyway. And I wanted to discuss something about the online class also, how to engage, okay. Here, because talking about, because now we do not know, because even principal indicated that we do not know when the students will come to the physical classroom. Up to December or January, we'll be conducting online classes only. Here, I want to stress something, because there are some strategies, only one, because all our faculty members are conducting online. So here, what I'm asking is, the teacher need to be clear about their expectations. So tell them if we want them to leave the video on for discussion, because why it is vital for the class community to be able to see each other faces. Because sometimes we worry about the dress code. See, you must be very particular. You insist on the dress code. See, it is very, very similar to coming to a physical classroom. Just because he is at home, he cannot actually have the dress code. He must have a dress code, right? When you feel that, you must make all the people to switch on the video and you have some kind of discussion. See, why I'm telling this, here, the next slide you can see. Right. Why the virtual conferencing also, you can actually start with the icebreaker, right? Like you do in a physical classroom. Okay. Some interesting concepts you discuss, right? Informal, right? And the students who are, because this point is very important. The students who are learning remotely are likely missing the social interaction associated with being in college. This is very, very, very psychologically, this is very, very important because it is missing. Okay. So I am just visiting the online classes then and there conducted by our faculty members, because our faculty members are here only, because most of the students are switching off the video. Okay. So then and there, you must make the students switch on the video and ask them questions. So they must actually see the faces of their friends also. That is called the social interaction, which they get in the physical classroom. It should be there in the online class also. So you initiate a discussion, okay, and then let all the them switch on. See, sometimes you actually put forward some kind of discussion questions. Then you can actually have some kind of a chat box. You ask them to use the chat box or raise the hand, something like that, and then unmute their mic and so on. But sometimes when you want to have some kind of discussion, right, they must switch on the video. Please do that. So this kind of social interaction, students, otherwise it is monotonous. Okay, they'll be lost. And if the video is not switched on, we do not know whether they are there. Okay, sometimes then and there, you have to make them to switch on, right? This I wanted to discuss more. Okay, I'll quickly go through. Okay, so something about the Google Translate. Another 10 minutes, I'll finish, right? So now, on the left side, you see translation for Chinese script, right? Chinese script, text. It is actually translated to Tamil on the right side. Okay, so text translation is there. Okay, so all the smartphones, right? They have a Google Translate app. Please actually install this. Okay, please install this, and then you see here, introducing Tap to Translate. See, if you install Google Translate, this icon will come. Okay, so if you actually go to the settings and enable Tap to Translate, this icon will be permanently there in all the places. Suppose you are seeing a Facebook, right? There are some comments. If it is in actually in Malayalam or some other language, just tap that discussion or tap, you can copy it, then tap this icon here. so that it will convert it into the destination language. I am doing this now because most of the times it will be in the Spanish, sometimes it will be in German or Sinhalese or something like that. I just copy and tap this, right? And the destination language is Tamil, I get it in Tamil. Okay, now you see this video here.
Things
Very
like
short video.
field trip permission slips and maybe class disclosure documents.
This is
things
translate.
Like that. How could you translate a whole document? Well, you could click and drag to highlight the text of your document, copy, paste it in, and then copy and paste it back into your document. But in many cases, there's a better way, and that's this, translate a document. And here's what the document looks like that I want to translate into English. This is what it looks like in Spanish. This is the original. And you can see it's a very serious paper that's been written up about teaching math. And this document is pretty complex, several different pages. So I wonder how well that's going to translate. Let's give it a try. So I click Translate a Document, choose File, and I select the file, open it, and I just click Translate. And then notice in the lower left corner, it's giving me updates about the translation process. Right now it's waiting for it to finish uploading, and it then translates it and produces it for you to look at. So here is the English translation of the document. And I can browse down through it, and let's take a look at the results. It says, from the point of view of the teaching of mathematics, the above reflections, they must be realized at the age and knowledge of students. We cannot propose same problems a mathematician, an adult, a teenager, or a child because their needs are different. Now, is that perfect English? No, that's not perfect English. But do I understand the gist of that paragraph? Yes, I do. And so I hope that helps you see that Google Translate, while not perfect, really can be very useful. Let's try it again. This time I've got a different document. It's the Gettysburg Address, and let's see how well that gets translated. Now, you'll notice the mistake I just made. I haven't changed the selected languages, and so it says this document's already in English. So I need to change it and say this document's going to go from English into Spanish and upload the document again. And you can see there's the Gettysburg Address in Spanish. Now, this ability to translate online becomes even more, I think, important and useful when considering languages that aren't even based on the same alphabet. So for example, I could translate into Chinese. So I'll go from English into Chinese traditional and choose the same Gettysburg Address document, and I'll click translate, and there's the Gettysburg Address in Chinese. So what a useful tool this is. One more example that I'd like to share with you, and that is you can also use Google Translate to translate a website. So I'm going to go here to a web page that's in Spanish. And because I am in Google Chrome, you'll notice that it's already recognizing that it's a foreign language and it wants to know if I would like to translate it right here. But if you don't always use Chrome, you may not get this every time you go to a website that you might want to translate. Okay, so instead of showing you this method of just clicking translate, I'd like to show you the old-fashioned way, I guess, of translating a web page, and that is to go up to the top, click on the URL. You can just click once on any part of the URL and it highlights it, and then copy that. You could right-click copy or use a keyboard shortcut, and then go back to Google Translate and paste in the URL, and you need to make sure it's translating into the right language for you, whatever that is. And then you can click the link and it takes you to a translation of the website. So again,
So this is a simple translation. I think that is actually more.
things like
Now, this is actually very interesting, holding conversation using Google Translate. Because initially I told you that the real-time translation, you see here.
We've all been there. You have something in your phone that you need to translate. Maybe it's a text from your coworkers, a YouTube comment, or a post from a friend, and you just need to know what it says. But it's actually a lot of steps to translate it. You copy it, switch apps, paste, translate, reply, switch back, and hit send. You do that with every message, over and over and over. So we had an idea. What if instead of switching apps, Translate was accessible from inside any app? So you could translate any text right there. It's something we're calling Tap to Translate, a feature in the new Google Translate app. Here's how it works. Say you're chatting in WhatsApp. Maybe your roommates all speak Hindi, but you don't. And you're wondering what this is. Just copy the text like you always do, and the translation appears right up here. You can even hear how to say it. Shubh Shukrawar. Maybe you want to impress them by replying in Hindi. So you type, let's party. You drop it in and hit send. You did it all without switching apps. And of course, it works in any app. Anytime you copy text you might want to translate. It works offline too. So if you don't have a connection at the moment, you can still translate stuff. Tap to Translate. Get it with the new Google Translate app for your Android phone.
Now you see the whole conversation is very interesting. You must see it.
There are a number of apps out there that help you translate from one language to another. But for the most part, you're dealing with just written text. But now, Google's update to their free Google Translate app for iOS and Android, users can now have spoken conversations and have them translated between two languages almost instantly. To help demonstrate, I've enlisted the help of CNET's multilingual dream team. I'll be playing the role of the monolingual entitled white guy. Let's see if this app can help me out. To get started, I'll open up the app, check that it's set to translate between English and the language I want to translate to, and tap the mic. Right now, it's listening for English, and when I stop, it will automatically translate to Spanish.
Y ahora estoy escuchando lo que estoy diciendo y traduciendo al español cuando he terminado.
I'm going to press the microphone a second time, and then I can have a conversation. All right, so Ben, how's it going?
Está bien así. Entonces, ¿cómo te va?
No te entiendo nada de lo que me estás tratando de decir.
I do not understand anything of what you're trying to tell me.
No te está haciendo favores esta aplicación, más bien te está haciendo sonar como idiota.
As the application is doing favors, rather than sounding like an idiot.
Right back at you, Vanessa. Stop things, I'll press the mic button again. And now to change things up, I'll set to Japanese. And I'll change the language setting from Spanish to Japanese. Then tap the mic button a few times to kick it into the conversation. Hello, Seth. How are you doing today?
こんにちは。ですが、どのようにそれが今日起こっている。
今日はすごい忙しいです。
It is amazing busy today.
Sorry, man.
That's close. That's close.
So sorry. I hope they give you a break soon. Yeah.
さて私は彼らはすぐにあなたに休憩を与える願っています。
私はsushi好きです。
I like sushi.
Well, okay. I hope this weekend you get to enjoy some. Now, for our last conversation, I'm going to try Russian with Boris. Boris, thanks for joining me here and testing out this app.
Борис, спасибо, что присоединились меня сюда, чтобы проверить это приложение.
Спасибо, что пригласили меня сюда.
Thank you for inviting me here.
How's the translation so far?
Хорошо, как это перевод до сих пор?
Перевод довольно точный, особенно с русского на английский.
Translation pretty neat, especially from Russian to English.
So you can download the app and try this, right? Any language you can translate. So now, at last, I'm going to show you, this is the last slide, Google Urmila's story. Okay, this is posted by Google, and definitely this will inspire you.
मेरा नाम उर्मिला है, ईपी की रहने वाली हूँ। मेरे 3 बच्चे हैं, स्कूल में जाते हैं और बच्चों को होमवर्क नहीं करा सकते हैं, लेकिन चलो मेरे बच्चे 4 हो गए। थोड़ा सा नेट पढ़ ले के जाके कोई भी पढ़ा लिखा तो काम हो वो नहीं कर सकते हैं। बार बार कहने पड़ती है उन लोगों के कि मतलब थोड़ा सा बता दिए। मुझे पहली बार जैसे बच्चों को मतलब बार बार कविता नहीं आ रही थी, मतलब फोटो लाई
1 कप सोयाबीन बहियों में 4 कप पानी डालकर उबालें।
तो इसने पढ़ के सुनाया है और जैसे मतलब रिपोर्ट कार्ड आओ बच्चों को
अंग्रेजी, हिंदी, गणित, विज्ञान।
मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा कि मतलब वो चीज है, मतलब जो चीज है आप तो खुद के लिए बहुत कुछ काम कर लेंगे।
चालू खाता, बचत खाता।
अब मुझे अब जैसे रेलवे की टिकट कटाना है तो मैं कटा सकती हूँ किसी के सहारा नहीं लेने पर। एक तो इसमें बहुत बेहतर है।
So definitely this should inspire you. This is called the Google Lens. Google Lens you can invoke, right? And the homepage itself, you can just click and get the Google image. So any text and image you can convert it into the destination language. It will be English or Tamil or Hindi. And then you can make it to talk also. Okay. So there are a lot of features. I want you people to actually explore this. Okay. And so, oh, I'm sorry. I given in Chinese, the last slide. I'm going to use my cell phone, Google Lens, to get it translated. Okay, you see it here. So, Mikka Nandri. Thank you very much. Nisha, my presentation is over.
Okay, sir. Really good, sir. It is informative also, sir.
Yeah, definitely.
Sir, I'm having one small doubt, sir.
Yes. Please, sir, tell me.
Actually, I don't know Hindi, sir. My son will have a homework daily, sir. So at that time, how to use that, sir? Because now I have downloaded that Google Translate in my mobile, sir.
No. You have got a book in Hindi, okay?
Yes, sir.
Right. Using Google Lens, just to see the page.
Lens. Okay, sir. Okay,
translate.
sir.
And then my button, it will speak to you.
Okay, sir.
You can translate or read it in Hindi itself, or translate and read it, everything you can do.
Okay, sir.
Everything you do. Or you can actually get a photograph and then you show your camera, smartphone camera, it will try to convert it to the distant language. You can actually pass and store it inside. See, anything you can do. See, the Urmila is trying now. You saw what is she doing, right? Because she doesn't know how to read. So use a Google Lens and ask this smartphone to speak to her. Okay. Right? So
Well,
this
I'll try and send the feedback to you.
very useful app, right? But not actually gone to publicity, but you must use it. And when the students come, or even the students you can introduce to this, lot of features are there, but due to limitations, I have shown only little. Okay, because I am actually using it very effectively. Any language, because you see here, it can actually convert text to any language. 1 or 3 languages are supported.
Yes, I have seen.
1 or 3 languages. And then if it is actually conversation, you know that the conversation, 43 languages are supported. Suppose it's the text in an image, 88 languages are supported. Okay. So very powerful tool. Okay, very powerful tool. And if you have a smartphone, you can expect all these facilities. Okay. Right? Okay, thank you very much.
Sir, one more doubt, sir.
Yes.
Sir, suppose the text is in English alphabet, sir.
Okay.
But it represents a Hindi word.
Okay.
So will this app will translate to our record one, sir?
No. The thing is, if it, you say that in the Tanglish Mari.
Yes, sir.
அது வந்து பண்ணாதுங்க. Because what it does, it's very simple inside the neural translation.
Okay.
First, it converts the input and any language. It converts first into English. From English, it converts to the destination language. This is the method they are following. Okay. So if and Hindi is written in English, it's very difficult. See, it actually transfers one language to another language only. But where come you get some language written in English? I don't know, because the textbooks it will be in that particular language only. Yeah.
Okay. In WhatsApp, we are receiving like that, no sir.
WhatsApp, I am using this tab to translate. In the Facebook, a lot of videos will be coming, and a lot of responses from different countries. Singlish வரும், ஜெர்மன்ல வரும், ஸ்பானிஷ்ல வரும். அப்போ வந்து இப்போ முதல்லலாம் ஒண்ணுமே புரியாது. இப்போ வந்து வெரி ஈஸி. நான் அதை ஜஸ்ட் காப்பி இட் அண்ட் டிரான்ஸ்லேட் தமிழ்ல வந்துருது. ஸோ ஐ நோ த ரெஸ்பான்ஸ் ஆஃப் த பர்டிகுலர் இண்டிவிஜுவல். அது ரொம்ப ஈஸியா இருக்கு நீங்கப்பா. ஃபார் டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் எனி டெக்ஸ்ட்.
சில வெப் பேஜ் ஆட்டோமேட்டிக்கா அந்த டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் கொடுப்பாங்க சார். பட் எல்லா வெப் பேஜ்மே இருக்காது. பட் நவ திஸ் இஸ் இப்போ யூஸ்ஃபுல்லா இருக்கும் சார்.
சில டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் கொடுப்பாங்க. டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் சம்டைம்ஸ் இருக்காது. அப்போ வந்து இதை யூஸ் பண்ணலாம்.
எஸ் சார்.
அதனால தான் ஐ ஷோட் யூ த லாஸ்ட் ஸ்லைட். அது சைனீஸ்ல தேங்க் யூ வெரி மச். I use my smartphone to convert it into Tamil. மிக்க நன்றி. அதை இது கிளிக் பண்ணி அதை அப்படியே ஸ்டோர் பண்ணி உங்களுக்கு காமிச்சிடுறாங்க. It is possible. Even in the computer screens, if something appears in different language, you can see through your smartphone and see in a destination language, Tamil, English, anything you can see.
Okay.
Very instantaneous. But it's not a perfect translation. You know, some of the languages, the grammars are different. It's but more or less you get, you see, it actually converts. You know, I tried our website.
Okay.
Converted into Tamil. Rumbo super vandhudu. VCT website. You can try it. VCT website.
paragraph கொடுத்து ட்ரை பண்ணிருக்கேங்க சார். mostly for PhD thesis க்கு நம்ம வைப்போம்லைங்க சார். பட் அந்த சென்டென்ஸ் அந்த இலக்கணம் தமிழ் இலக்கணம் வந்து கரெக்ட்டா வந்திருக்காதுங்க சார். பட் somewhat it gives some around accuracy will be around 75%.
Because they are continuously actually improving. Because they are trying to develop their software, continuously updating. Day by day, they are actually grooming it. And இப்போதைக்கு it's very useful. நீங்க வந்து try. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Really superb session, sir.
Okay. இப்போ கடைசியா எத்தனை பேர் உட்கார்ந்திருக்காங்க?
22 members.
Okay. All the 22 members, all the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for highlighting the importance of innovative, interesting and interactive teaching methods and explaining us Z2A approach, pure instruction and using Google Translate effectively. We are grateful to you for joining us to address this virtual group of teachers. Thank you once again, sir.
Is it Preeti?
No, sir. It's Aarti, sir.
Oh, Aarti. Okay, Aarti. Okay, thank you, Aarti.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
For participants, we shall break for lunch. The next session will start at 2:30 p.m. We shall meet after lunch break. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.